everyone. My name is John Loscuito. I'm the Art Gallery Director here at Florida Gulf Coast University Art Galleries, and it's my pleasure to welcome Terre Rybovich to have a conversation with us about her work that will be in the upcoming exhibition, When We See Further. That exhibition will be October 16th through November 19th of 2020 in the Wasmer Art Gallery here at Florida Gulf Coast University. And Terre Rybovich is one of 4 South Florida artists in the exhibition, along with Heather Couch, Marina Font, and Renee Ray. So Terre, thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to having a conversation with you about your work.
So do I.
Great. Well, I see some work behind you, which is wonderful. I believe it's work in progress for the exhibition. And this is a great opportunity to talk about that process. I'm interested in what is the development of your work? How do you make it? And what are some of the reoccurring themes that you find yourself dealing with in your work as well?
Let me start by saying that I didn't study art in school. I studied politics and economics. And yet, from the time I could hold a crayon, I have never stopped drawing. But then about 2 decades ago, I actually got very sick with the flu and was just delirious for days. And in the delirium, I got this idea to draw backwards. And what that meant was, rather than making marks on a clean sheet of paper, I would start by covering the paper with charcoal, and then I would erase the image from the charcoal. And since I was mostly focused on figure drawing in those days, I thought, well, why not use my body to remove the charcoal? What I didn't expect was that that imprint, if I could quiet my mind and let that imprint guide me in the process of drawing, I could make drawings that I would never have imagined. I feel like I've become a much better artist since I started working with the imprints. And so that's become a key part of my process, is letting the imprint guide me through the process. So having said that, in the last 10 years, I've become a serious birder, not just somebody who loves birds, but somebody who goes in search of particular kinds of birds, particular kinds of times of year. And I only draw from photographs that I've taken of the birds. So each of my drawing of a bird, it's capturing a moment, the moment when I found the bird and took the picture of it, and then bringing it to life again in the studio. And during well, we'll talk about the quarantine later, but the drawing birds on a grand scale engages my body in a way that a much smaller drawing doesn't. And so to be true to my process, I've been tracing my body on the bird drawing as I'm lying on the board. All my drawings are big drawings stapled to plywood. So I lie on them and trace the positions that I'm in as I'm drawing the bird, and leave a trace of the entire process and not just of the bird itself.
It's fascinating because we've talked about your work a number of times. I've been to your studio, and every time we have a conversation, a little more comes out about your process and your history and what you're interested in. And I know that the birds are going to play a large role in this exhibition, along with your body, and the reference to the physical body, the psychological body is something we've been talking about. And that really came out of the conversations with the other artists. So I'm curious, when we first started imagining this exhibition with the other artists a year ago, you had not met them, you didn't know their work. Now that you've had time to get to know them a little bit better, and you've seen how they deal with the psychological and physical body, has that had any influence, or has that resonated with you in a way that's changed your work at all?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I have to say that while quarantine has been very good for me, I mean, it basically means I'm at home alone in my studio drawing. It also means that we didn't get to spend a week together like we had planned, and that's just been a big disappointment. I still look forward to that happening, even though I know it's not possible. But Yes, I mean, I made notes on each of the artists because they really have had an impact on me in different ways. And in the case of Heather, she invites me to welcome not just risk, but precariousness, um, imperfection into my process. In her work, she's willing to test the limits of the process, test the limits of herself, and exhibit the end result, which is, you know, itself sometimes imperfect, precarious, in some cases hairy.
Right, right.
And I am a pretty meticulous person, and you know, I can spend 100 hours on a drawing, and once you've got that much time into it, you really don't feel like making mistakes. And yet, I have to admit, when I have made mistakes, they've often been some of the best parts of the drawing. And so she reminds me to invite that rather than let it in with a lot of hesitation. In the case of Renee, um, her work is introducing me to the idea of finding different identities inside me in the process of drawing, which is not something I've given a lot of thought to. She does
Mm-hmm.
an amazing job of, to hear her talk, it sounds like everything she does is a self-portrait. And yet you look at her work and you don't see Renee in it, but it's the Renee that Renee sees. And that's really fascinating to me. But also the distinction between figure and ground, you know, what's the main subject of the drawing and then what's the background. She uses that figure ground distinction as a metaphor, which is equally intriguing to me. I've never seen anybody impart as much meaning to their backgrounds as she does in her work, and it's rich work. And with Marina, it's about seeing, you know, my work is so intuitive and personal, and she opens me to the idea of the woman's body as a universal, every woman sort of thing,
Right.
but also that woman is biology. And you know, that could really bring depth to my work if I can embody that in my process. And you and Annika have contributed as well, you know, seeing the forgive me, I've forgotten the name of the artist that was the who I presume is a Sufi, was had the show up in February of the beautiful nature-based work.
Oh, Mali Khorasanchi, I believe. Yeah.
That called me to a much higher level of professionalism, and it was just it made a deep impression on me.
And it's been a joy to work with so many artists, and this is something that uh, we really look forward to, is, you know, inviting artists that, you know, maybe haven't worked with each other before, and seeing how they grow, how they respond to each other, how their work changes. And I think what you just explained is what we hope to accomplish. It's wonderful. So, you know, I can't wait to see this manifest in person in the gallery. Some of the things that you mentioned about, you know, I think some of the ideas you were talking about with the other artists and yourself, they were embedded in what we hoped to create as an interesting title for the show. We called the show "When We See Further," and I have my own, you know, interpretation about what that means. And I think all of you do as well. But I'm curious, can you explain, what does the title "When We See Further" mean to you and your work?
You know, all my life I've seen myself living a big story. There was always this epic in the background of my memory, whatever it was I was doing as a child and as an adult. And so it was all about seeing further, and you know, things really mattered. And so it relates to me in a deep way in that sense. But since I started working with the body and learning what I can learn from the body, seeing further also has to do with hearing the body and heeding what it tells me to do in the studio and outside the studio. So it's an apt title for me.
That's great. I haven't heard that in our conversation, so that's also a new piece of information coming out of this one. I love that idea of listening to your body and your body being able to give you information that allows you to understand more, to see further. That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it a little bit already, and it was really fascinating to hear you talk originally in our conversation about having the flu and the delirium that you had. And here we are, unfortunately, dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. You hinted at it changing your work and changing how you see things. Can you talk a little bit more about what that has done?
Yeah, it's interesting for me because the pandemic has really been sort of tugging at me, pulling me back to my activist self, because I mean, this really is a historic catastrophe that we're living through. But the body is always more interested in unity than in conflict. And what the body seemed to want most of all was safety. And it was that inspired me to make the breastplates that I've made for the show. The body wanted breastplates. So, it's the idea of the ancient armor that I've made with what I happen to have on hand, which was magazines and shipping tape. So it's, listening to the body always leads me in a very grounded, holistic kind of perspective. And, it's during the time of all these crises, it's easy to think that art is not as relevant as it has been in the past, that there are other things that matter more. But there are always crises happening somewhere in the world. It's just that these happen to be closer to home. And, I think artists, we have to continue making art. It would be a crisis if we didn't. But the question of relevance really stays with me because I know my work is, it doesn't, working with the body again, it doesn't want me to preach to people or tell people what to do. It's a lot more interested in something more subtle and intuitive than that. And my intent with my work is always to call people into the sort of meditative state that I'm in when I create the work. And with any luck, help them find a happier place to be in that moment. So that's what I'm contributing in the fight against COVID-19.
That's great. I love when you start talking about what does the body want, and the body wants safety and it wants connection. And I think what you're hinting at, or what you're trying to allude to, is the role of art to connect us and to connect us in a deeper way to each other, which is exactly what we need at this time more than ever. So thank you for doing that.
You are so welcome, John.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. We're going to end it here, but the conversation will continue in the exhibition. We hope everyone can make it in person to see the exhibition. If not, certainly we will offer online opportunities. Make sure to visit our website for all the updates on that. We have a little ways to go before the exhibition opens, and I look forward to seeing what all of you do during installation. Thank you so much, Terry.
Yes, thank you, John.